What's going on, everybody? My name is MGTheFuture. Today I'll be bringing you guys an exclusive Maschine Masters tutorial. Today's subject is going to be, what would the Stereotypes do? The Stereotypes is a group of producers whose sound has been largely shared on Bruno Mars' latest album. And the track I want to look at in particular is That's What I Like. And what's cool about that track is that it's a genre-bending production where it's fusing trap. There's even some Jersey club in there, subtly. And of course, there's a lot of post-era disco funk influence in it. And it sounds like a big pop West Coast track. And the biggest thing that I got from it is that everything comes from the bass line, really, and the texture of that bass line and the way its notes are played. So I'm going to dive into that. I had a friend also ask me to highlight how to do the trap drum or the snare drum breakdown. So that was the first thing I did, was work on the drums. So I'm going to show you guys that in a second. But if you haven't heard the song, check it out. There's quite a few producers and writers on it. Even James Fauntleroy is on it with background vocals. So that it's no surprise to me that the song is as big as it is. Wikipedia even gives you the composition, what key it's in, D flat major, and of course it quotes trap and another song that's referenced that sounds kind of like that. But you know, if it's inspired by Pharrell, then Pharrell's inspired by Prince, and Prince inspired Morris Day, and you get this complete circle of fifths or 5 degrees of separation or less of the people in that style of music. I found some other songs I'm going to use, such as Kool and the Gang's Get Down on It. And of course, you got Jungle Love and anything really Morris Day from that time period, the early 80s, late 70s, right when disco was fizzing out. So let's check out these drums first. Here's the instrumental to the original track. I got it pitched up. Let me play that first. So what's cool about this speeding up samples or tracks like that, sometimes when you change their pitch or you increase the pitch, I should say, not just lowering it, but if you increase it, you can hear the instruments better. You can hear that it's layered. The stabs are actually layered with another higher synthesizer. And if you slow it down or change your project tempo to slow down, you can hear the drum hits more clearly. So it's cool for mapping. I went ahead and mapped my own. I want to play that real quick for you. And just in case the person that asked me is watching this video about the snare roll, I have it here for you. It's this lane, if I'm not mistaken, and this one layered up. So it's just a simple hit, then it turns into triplets, and then at the end it turns into triplets again, but instead of 1/16 triplet is 1/32 triplet. So let's play that back. Then for the rest of this part, I have the JV1010. It's like this down effect that it used to have back in the day. If you ever had like an XV2020 or something, there's this down effect that the Bruno Mars track is using that comes from the Roland JV series. And then the Jersey Club bed squeak as well. And the bed squeak has a call and response with a triangle or, a high-pitched percussive sound, and it's A and B. And what that reminded me of is a lot of Timberland stuff, like a lot of Timberland's older beats that are more the simpler ones. There's always a call and response between this percussion where you would expect it to be with instruments, but he does it with pitched or tuned percussion instead. So if you listen to Tweets Oh My, you'll hear it. There's a low percussion and a high percussion going back and forth with each other. So in this case of this instrumental, the bed squeaks going back and forth with the bell sound. Quarter notes, triplet notes, 32 notes on the downbeats to give it that rhythm. The second part of this I wanted to quickly cover is how to get that vibe of a funk song. And what I ended up doing is pulling Get Down on It as a reference and see if I can get the bass line from it and then try to add something on top of it from there. So I'm gonna play this pitched up. Get down on it. So the chord placement's very similar. The bass line is different in terms of timing, but the end is similar. And even the sounds, the synthesizers, they're all very similar. So what I'm going to want to do is use an EQ and filter that out. I'm going to use the steepest curve and just solo the bass. You can usually re-record this or resample it and convert the harmony to MIDI or the melody to MIDI to get the bass line in, or some of the lower ends of the chords if you wish. But usually when I'm playing single note bass lines, I can figure it out. So let me see if I can pull up a VST. When you're doing this style of music, it's always cool to have the right instruments and context. So Omnisphere is pretty decent about that because it sorts them by synthesizer name. If you know the name of the synthesizer that Omnisphere sampled, you can just type that in and it'll bring all of those up. So I searched Google for what was the best synthesizer for the funk era, and everything came up with the Oberheim. And tons of examples of the Oberheim being used. Earth, Wind & Fire, Brothers Johnson, Herbie Hancock, Rolls-Royce, of course, Prince, with your boy Morris Day and all of them. So what we want to do in Omnisphere is type up the Oberheim. And luckily for us, it has them. So what we want to find is bass from the Oberheim. So let's see if I can figure this, get down on it. I think I got it. Normally on a funk track, you might not want to quantize it, depending on how bad your latency is. So now that I got the bass, I can go ahead and layer that up with my version of the track. So that's pretty smooth. I'm going to go ahead and fold these notes if they're not already. And we have E, A, B, D, and D is an octave for the end of that sequence. So there's only 4 keys for the bass line. So what I like to do is find out what scale that's in. So I use my scale finder tool. I'll go ahead and punch in E. It's looking like C major, but it's probably going to be something else. And in older videos, I've showed you guys how to find out which would be the best one. So in this case, C major comes up first. But what you want to find out is if you can find that E coming up first. So we found one, E. So E natural minor, E is first. So B is in there. B is the second, third, fourth, is the fifth. So it's the 1 to the 5. A is the 4. Cool. So we got the 1, the 5, the 4, the 1, the 4, and the 5. Like I said, when you're doing with the circle of fifths or you're doing with scales, the 1, the 4, and the 5 are the same type of key. So if it's an E minor, the 1, 4, and 5 are minors. So you can play your chords like that too when you go along with this song. So it's going to be E natural minor with E, A, B. And then it also has a D in it, which is 7. It ends on 7. So the last chord could be a 7 or inversion. So that's what I want to try to figure out next. Just to build on top of that, we're going to add Omnisphere back in again. See if we can get another Oberheim. Hopefully there's a pad or a polysynth from the Oberheim that will serve this function for us. Cool. So the next thing you can do, if you have Ableton Live, is going to scale. I'm pulling C minor. And let's see if we can push it up to E minor. Starts on E. Let's check that scale out again. So we got E. Got F sharp. You got G. And what I'm checking is the keys. That's an E natural minor. Just making sure that the MIDI scale tool also in its diagonal line, that each key corresponds correctly, and that it's not doing something that looks like this. Like I'm not climbing it and I'm hitting it out of the diagonal step order. So So because E is the first chord, you can start on E. I already know these chords in E minor because they're just like a C major. And with this kind of music, a lot of these guys come from the disco era, and then it's coming into where funk is growing and kind of phasing out in house. So you know a lot of house chords are like sevenths, like I did in my previous tutorial. Well, with funk, you can do sevenths as well, although ninths and 13ths and 11ths are probably more common. And basically you're just adding a key to the pattern of the chord. So the sevenths is the fourth key, the ninth is the fifth key, 11th, so on and so forth. So it's every other key in the scale. And you just keep building. So I'm gonna lay down the first chord, a big E chord, like a stab. And because that bass line is a little bit more busier than the Bruno Mars one, I'm not going to get in its way. And then you can add on to it, like you can duplicate it, double it up, and try to play something else along with it. When you duplicate it, you keep your scale modifier with you. So that's a good practice to have, just to duplicate the previous channel so you don't have to reset it up and recheck it again. And then for additional instruments for this type of song, of course you can use leads. They have like that electric guitar, high sine lead that you use, theremins you can use, even stuff like wah guitars. So all I'm doing is I'm playing a chord based on the keys of the bass line. So in this case, the bass line ends on, there's an A that turns into a B. So I'm going to disregard the B and just deal with the A. And then the same thing over here, the last beat is just all D. And if you want it to be smoother, you can invert it. And then other than that, everything else is there's a lot of chords in the song, a lot of chord turnarounds, a lot of chord change-ups. So you can add probably leads to it for the hook. For the soft part where it's breaking it down, you notice on the original there's just like a brass or type of synthesizer pad playing, and then it builds up into that. So you can use a different sound or lower the keyboard range of it and play something different. I'll try something like that, something corny, just to bring the point across. So that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to show you guys, is how to analyze tracks like that when you're hearing something for the first time, especially in this case of this song, is that it's merging a lot of different influences. So your ear might not necessarily be tuned to what they're doing. So it's literally a trap beat laced up with some really dope big chords and some very timeless instruments from our past. A lot of the Oberheims, the Junos, a lot of cool stuff. And then once you have that, just finding a bass line. The best way to find a bass line, similar to how DJ Mustard borrowed influence from house music, you just go back a decade and borrow some bass lines from funk music, and you got yourself the ingredients for one of the biggest songs of the year. But anyway, If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave it in the box below. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. We greatly appreciate it. Tell me what you think on social media as well. I'm at MGTheFuture, and you can also follow the Maschine Masters at Maschine Masters. One last time, thank you guys for tuning in. Until next time.